Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Olle Lensmar, CTO here at SmartBear in Stockholm.
I'm Eric Everling. I'm one of the developers here.
Niklas Reimertz, one of the guys here.
And I'm Henrik. I'm on the loadUI team.
Now you can say like you're like in Unprepared Geeks that you're the other Henrik, or
No,
I'm also a Henrik.
No, that's kind of nice. Only one Henrik.
Yeah, only one Henrik in the room. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we have a number of questions people have sent us in advance, but also you're free to add or send any questions you might have over the chat, in live stream, or on Twitter at #UI QA. Did I do that right? UIQA. So let's get going. We'll start with some easy questions. The first one comes from Irina Nikonova. And it's a very simple question. It's why does URLs with underscore not work in soapUI 4.5? Details. In soapUI 4.1 it worked fine, but soapUI 4.5 throws an error for an underscore sign. So the question is, have we introduced a bug? I give it to the table.
A bug?
Yeah.
No, kidding. You want to go or?
Yeah, sure. I guess the main reason for this is that, due to the latest version of soapUI 4.5, we actually made some changes in the inner core of the HTTP engine, so to say. And due to this upgrade, underscores actually don't work in URLs because that's not supported, in the URL standard, so to say. So that's the main reason, actually, that you shouldn't use them.
So it's more now we're more strict to the standard.
Yeah, you could say that.
Before we were more liberal.
Yeah.
For good and for worse.
Yeah, for good and
Sure.
so.
Yeah.
So in a way, you could say if you're a strict person, you would say that we actually have removed the bug.
Yes.
Yep.
We didn't prepare this. I'm so sorry, guys, for saying this, but would there be a workaround for it? Should we even encourage a workaround for it?
No, not that we know of, at least. It's in the library that we use for HTTP traffic, and they enforce these standards. So
Yeah, and we're not the only ones using this library, right?
no, I think it's probably one of the most popular.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
libraries.
running maybe you're running your web service on Tomcat or another app server, and then you want to migrate to another JBus, for example, then maybe things break because of this, because they can also be more or less strict on the standard. So you should never encourage this, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Also, I posted a quick link in the chat for the coming question here. And this is from Goodwin Chukwu. And sorry for pronouncing your... Anybody here who has a question, don't get insulted if I pronounce your last name wrong. My name is Reimertz, and I think most of you would pronounce my name wrong as well. So here are the questions. Goodwin asked the following. 1A. How to call soapUI from a Java program. Pass the information for a request and then execute the request. That's one. How to read the response. So you send a question, you send a request, and how you pass data into that request somehow. And then how you read it, extract the values in the response, and save it in an Excel file. Third, which we're not actually going to answer that much, is how to call a website from soapUI. Read XML from the site and save it to Microsoft Excel. Quickly, I'll just say working with websites is not soapUI's specialty. We do APIs. But if you want to call websites, there is another excellent tool from SmartBear called Test Complete. Use that one. It's fantastic. So how do you gather data, send it to a request, and how do you take the data from a response and save it?
Yeah, so the first question was calling from through Java API, and,
Yep.
and so soapUI is it's a Java program, so you can easily add the soapUI libraries to your class path and actually call into soapUI and do anything that soapUI can, more or less. So you can create projects and send requests and import whistles and do all that stuff. And there are some examples on the website under the developers corner. I think it's called integrating with soapUI or something. There is a code snippet that actually shows you how to create a project, import a whistle, send a request, etc. I think that should give you the guidance to do what you were talking about from a code perspective. So you create the request, and inserting data into the request is basic string or XML processing, and the same thing is extracting data from a response. And even if it's a REST request, which is returned as JSON, for example, soapUI does convert that to XML for you, so you can access either the JSON representation or the XML representation. Depends on how you want to work with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the API way, and have a look at the developer corner and our the Java doc, which is pretty what do you say? Doesn't say much, but at least it gives you some guidance on what methods and things that you can do. But when it comes to the part that you were talking about or asking about, is how to extract something from a response and then write that to an Excel file. That's a pretty common scenario, actually, we have on support. So we had prepared a small demo. So I don't know if we want to show my screen here.
Yeah, I guess you're good to
It's
go.
showing.
Okay, so basically I have a really simple test case here. It has just 3 requests. So the first is a request that retrieves an item, a SOAP request that retrieves an item from a database. And then what we want to do is we want to take one data point from that response. Let's just run the request. You can see here we're getting this small data set back. We want to transfer, for example, the name here of the item we got back to an Excel file. So in soapUI we have what we call a property transfer, which is basically used for transferring, extracting data from a response message or from a request message and writing that to something. In this case we're going to write it to a data sync, which is a soapUI Pro feature, and in data sync you can set up an Excel data sync. You can also write your data to JDBC or a file system or whatever you might want to. So here it's straightforward. I've just specified the name of my Excel file. I have specified the property that I want to use that's going to be written to the Excel file, and then between those two I have the property transfer that reads, using XPath, reads the name of the item in the response and writes it to the data sync. So if I run this, we're not going to see much here, but the general idea here, it's going to run the request, it transferred the value, you can see that down here, that it transferred the name, and then it wrote that to the Excel file. And that's basically it. So it's really simple to set up tests where you transfer values between responses and requests and data sources, data syncs, having the property transfer as the facilitator to do that. So you can easily also, of course, transfer data from a response to another request, for example, a session ID, or if you have a data source, you can transfer data from that into a request, like you were talking about populating requests from some external source. So if you get to grips with property transfers and properties and how that works in soapUI, then you're on the road to success.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, great. I hope I answered that. I don't know. Was there any other dimension to that question?
Maybe regarding the Java integration,
Mhm.
what if it's a JUnit test? Is there an easier way then?
Well, it depends on what you want to do. So if you want to do like low-level stuff, just like create requests and send them, there's not an easier way. But if you want to run a pre-created test case, like if I want to run this test case from a JUnit test, you can basically instantiate the the same class that we're using in our command line tools, you can call that from your JUnit test, and that basically does all the plumbing for you for loading the project, calling the right, and creating the reports and everything. So it's a good question, and so if that's what you want to do as part of your JUnit tests, execute test cases or test suites that are already there, then that's a straightforward way to do it.
Cool.
Right.
So, hope that helps you, Goodwin. Now I'm going to lump together 3 questions that we have from different people. So it's Venkata Mandapati, Lakshmi Kotapalli, and Preti Yer. And all of you have asked about load testing. Preti wants to know about REST load testing. Lakshmi actually wants to know how to check a SOAP response when load testing using loadUI. It would be better to at least check the response when there's a fault or error response. And then Venkata asks how we can do load testing through soapUI. And Venkata says that you usually use it for web services. So what we should say is that although there is load testing in soapUI, we really don't pay much attention to it anymore. No. And there's a simple reason for that we have something much better for you. And that's what Henrik's going to show you. So we have loadUI. And let's switch over to Henrik.
Yeah.
You want keyboard control, right?
Yeah.
Should we switch places maybe?
Yep.
Probably the places.
If you can see the screen from here.
Yeah, I think that works.
Do you want me to expand this a bit, maybe?
This is my screen still. So
Yeah, so we'll switch over there. I'll help you with this.
Okay, so yeah, those were some questions were quite general.
Yeah.
So,
The
well,
answer
if
will be quite general.
yeah, the answer will be quite general, and if you have some follow-up questions, just type away in the chat, and I'll try to catch them. Yes. So what you can do for these questions? A lot of questions were to load test REST test cases or load test just general load testing in soapUI. So I'm going to start with soapUI actually. So here we have. So here we have something called REST demo, a project. Since someone was asking about REST.
Could I just do one small thing? Is that soapUI? So we have the remote session here. Is this the remote session?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. I will close this one down to save some CPU. There we go.
Okay, so here we have a very simple REST project. I'm going to assume that you know how to create REST projects in soapUI. Or if you want to load test soap, that's the same thing. It doesn't matter to loadUI really. So here we have something that sends a request to Google Maps, asking for. Let me see.
I think
So
that's. Sorry, it's the address for the Google Plex actually.
Yeah, so it's the headquarters for Google, and we're asking to maps.googleapis.com. So let's just verify that it works, and it works. You get back some suggestions for some matches for that search query, basically. Anyway, you don't need to understand this. It's just supposed to be a demo, simple REST project. Okay, so now this is loadUI. Looks a bit different. So if we wanna load test this, let's create a new product called REST, and then we have a bunch of runner components here. those are the components that actually runs request. And here we have a very convenient soapUI runner that can run any soapUI test case. I hope the screen is big enough to see what's going on. So now I just need to find my project. This is my soapUI project, REST demo. Click open, and here you see the exact same test step that I would see in soapUI. So it's the simple request, and I can run once. You'll see it sends a request, and it completed a request. So it works as fast, and this is actually the soapUI engine running here. Yeah, so if we want to load test this, I'm just going to show a very simple scenario here. I can add a component from this category, which is the virtual user generator. So you can generate virtual users for your scenario. That is to simulate real users. Maybe your users arrive at a random rate or at a fixed rate or something. I'm just going to go ahead with fixed rate here to keep things simple. I connect it to, so our virtual users will arrive. Let's say they should arrive at a rate of 3 virtual users per second, and once they arrive, they will go through this wire into the soapUI runner component and execute the soapUI test case. And then that's it. Then you just hit play, and I don't think you can see this, but here you can actually see the numbers of how many requests are running, how many requests have completed successfully, etc. And at some point, even Google, I guess, will start failing requests because it's overloaded. We're not going to do this at this time, though.
It won't be held responsible.
No. So that's how easy it is. And then why would you use loadUI? I mean, what does it bring to the table from soapUI load testing? Well, it brings a lot. It brings this nice visual UI. It brings statistics. We can watch statistics from all our runs. We can, for example, create a baseline run and say this is acceptable performance, and we want to make sure that we get the same performance each time or better. So I'm just adding some statistics. This is the response time, and this is the transaction per seconds, and you can zoom, and you can do style, and you can compare. I'm not going to get too deep into loadUI. You can distribute your tests. If you really want to crank up the load, you can run from several computers, or if you want to see how it performs from New Zealand or from India at the same time. Yeah, you can do a lot of things. I'm just going to show you one more thing here, and that's a sample project that's included with loadUI, which would take a bit too long time to build up for me during this Q&A. But here it is. This is a scenario. I'm going to hit play right away. Here it creates virtual users with a random rate. They log in using a soapUI test case. They fetch the soapUI test case fetches a user from a database. We have a database of some sample users, say, and then we send a login request. Then we save the session. We get a session. Imagine we're getting a session ID back from the login request. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's actually SOAP and not REST, but it's totally transparent to loadUI. Here we have a delay. Imagine users after logging in waiting for a random kind of delay with a mean time of 8 seconds. You know, looking for the right button to click or something if it's a website. And then here's the splitter component. So we have two outputs, and with 40% probability, users go left, 60% users go right, and we can change this at real time. Most things can be changed at real time. The left output goes to a search runner, and the right goes to a logout runner. And these are all, soapUI test cases. As you can see here in the logout runner, it's just a regular soapUI test case that we're reusing. So the pro is you can make all your functional tests. That's the start. You want to make sure that things work, and then you want to make sure that they are performing well, and then you can just reuse your functional test and make up a scenario. And all of these are using the session ID that we saved in the login step, if you remember. So everything here, I don't know if you can see this, but all the login steps and all the search steps are completing successfully. I could now, if I wanted to, I could disable the save session step in soapUI. So I'm just disabling that step on the fly, and immediately loadUI will adjust to that and not run that test step. And the other, the subsequent test cases will now fail because they require a session ID to be following along the virtual user. And we can see that they're failing, and yeah. You can read more about loadUI on loadUI.org. Feel free to ask any questions. I will stay along and chat with you.
Yep. We'll have one follow-up question straight away. I know that, and I'm bypassing Ken and tweet to Mirage here quickly, but this is an interesting follow-up, and one I hate answering, so that's why I wanted to take it straight away. So Kanigantip is asking, what's the difference between a SOAP web service and a RESTful web service?
Oh wow, that's a big question.
That's a big one.
You want me to answer, or
anybody is free
Okay.
to answer?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, strictly technical. If a SOAP web service exposes its functionality using SOAP, it has exposes a contract defined in WSDL, and SOAP is an XML-based messaging format, and it adheres to a bunch of standards. There are a lot of standards related to web services, SOAP-based web services, for good and for worse. REST, on the other hand, is a bit more lax. It doesn't have quite as many standards associated. It tries to leverage the functionality of HTTP for transferring information, messages, data, and over the wire. So that's the technical answer. But then there's also more a philosophical answer, and REST is something. In REST, you talk about resources, and you talk about representations of state, and you talk about using URIs as identifiers for resources, and you use the verbs in HTTP like put, get, delete, post, etc. to work with the representations of those resources. So you get a resource, you put a resource to create new ones, you post to update, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very resource, maybe data-centric way. In SOAP, you don't have that paradigm. It's basically you define your messages in your XML schemas and WSDL, and it can be either for modifying data, but it can also be for performing logic like a login or something. So that it's a different way, and I think if you look at a modern SOA or WOA or whatever you want to call it, I think there's a place for both of them, as always. I think SOAP does have its merits, especially in the enterprise community, where you have maybe high requirements for security, for reliable messaging, and for transactions and stuff like that. That's been actually pretty well agreed upon by most of the big vendors over the last 15 years. But REST, that part hasn't come that far. REST, on the other hand, is really easy to work with, and it has it's much easier to consume from a client, a JavaScript client, an HTML web page, and you're moving to JSON, which is
Yeah,
an
JSON. I
format.
think that's actually a major difference. Is that you have JSON in REST.
Yeah, in REST, in REST, you can get. They talk about representation. So the JSON representation is one that's becoming increasingly popular, just because it integrates so nicely with JavaScript as the consuming language, which JSON is basically JavaScript notation. So that works really, really well. Fortunately, though, if you're using soapUI, you can of course test both SOAP and REST services, and soapUI, as we mentioned already earlier, will convert JSON to XML, which allows you to also plug in JSON-based REST services into this whole hierarchy of property transfers and assertions and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if I answered.
I think is very cool with this XML transformation that we're doing in soapUI is that you can actually use things like XPath expressions on JSON responses. So you can actually like take the advantage of the XML tools for
validating
for JSON responses.
And it's really easy to create if you have like a functional test where you in one transaction want to first make a SOAP call, and then take that response and do a REST call, and then take that response and do a database lookup. You can easily transfer using common XML notation for an XPath transfer data between those requests and responses.
So, I have to ask, who prefers REST, who prefers SOAP? Hands up. REST?
Who prefers?
Yeah, who's a REST fanboy, I think it's an age
this
thing.
This is a hard one,
okay, you two guys for REST?
Yeah.
SOAP.
So
I'll still go for SOAP. I'm the old school.
So it's a generation.
It's a generation thing. Because what I like is that it's not so data centric; it's service centric. Now I'm really showing my age because I like the service perspective on it.
Yeah, and I think one thing from our perspective, and one thing that we see a lot in the REST community, here comes the defense, is that the fact that you have a contract in SOAP WSDL it makes a lot of things much easier. In the REST world, there is the waddle effort, and there's JSON schema, and there's a bunch of things, but there hasn't been a lot of agreement on that. And I think for certain cases, I think that's makes sense to have that. But I kind of see where you guys are going.
I get it as well. So, and actually, Tweet to Mirage came up with a opening test complexity. Test case of test suite takes ages if you have have a old REST project. That sounds.
Well, usually. The first time it usually takes time because soapUI does do a lot of internal initialization, but the second time you open a test case once you've started your soapUI sessions, it shouldn't take that long. So if it's something that you like and is noticeably worse and it doesn't get any better, and you're entitled to pro support, you could send us the project and we could do some profiling on it and have a look at it.
That's not how it should work. No. Also, I had Maria in the chat, and I really want to push anything else than ourselves. So, Ken, you want that non-echo link. So, turn off soapUI, turn off all that stuff, and go to livestream.com/SmartBear. I'll send you the link in the chat. Sorry, Ken. There we go. So I wanted to push something else than ourselves.
What? Okay.
And she asked about any good testing books, and I would like to recommend, which might sound weird because it's an agile book, but it's still really, really good, and it's very, very practical and very, very hands-on. We all read it here in the office. It's Agile Testing, a practical guide for testers and agile teams by Lisa Crispin, and it's fantastic. It kicks ass.
Yeah, and also I think Lisa Crispin has a very nice ideas also. So following her on Twitter is a good advice as well.
Yeah, follow at Lisa Crispin as one word on Twitter.
Yeah, she has really good insights on testing and agile.
So
in general.
Lisa, if you're watching, we love you.
Yeah. And we want our cut. No, but we really do. I think that's general here in the office.
It's echo-free on soapUI.org now.
It's echo-free on soapUI.org. Whoa. So that's one. Also, and you kind of went there as well with the there is also, if you're new, Maria, there are a few blogs you actually could follow. For example, Lisa Crispin's blog. You have James Bach's blog, Michael Bolton's blog, not the singer, the tester. And also, I really like, and with Scott Barber, if you're into performance testing, fantastic blog. Those are a few, and I think you should follow. And of course, if you're into testing, if you're really into testing, you should also follow @SmartBear on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. Those are great.
Okay. So, yep, Sifans, actually, I think we'll get to your question later. But let's take some of the questions we had here earlier, both on Twitter and in the chat. The first one from Ken R is the following. Is there a way to change the endpoint dynamically, like a property transfer from spreadsheet cell to the endpoint field, or by using Groovy? Which is...
Quick answer?
Yes.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
okay,
So
next
the
question.
target of a property transfer, like I showed you, can be the endpoint field of a request. So that's definitely straightforward. But if you want to transfer maybe just the host, you can do a Groovy script or property expansion as well. So it's definitely possible.
And also maybe we should mention that in SoapUI 4.5 we have this environment feature,
Yep. Yep.
which is very useful for switching between different environment, different endpoints for test environments and production environments.
I think that's actually the best thing you could do, is go for the using endpoints.
The environments.
Yeah, environments. Could we show? Because we do have endpoints, but that's more cumbersome.
Yeah, I mean, yes, both apply. But environments is a really powerful feature because it allows
Yep.
you to like if you have a testing environment, staging environment, development, you can configure your SOAP, your REST services, your JDBC connections. You can have project level properties to have different values for different environments, and then you basically just select, now I want to run my tests against that environment, and then soapUI will just switch which configurations it will use. So it's really easy to just run your whole batch of tests against another environment, and you can do it from the command line and in Maven and stuff like that as well. So that's a really powerful feature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's our most requested feature like a year ago or something when
Yeah.
you asked the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a top requested feature in our service.
So Ken R is still having that echo. Sorry, Ken. I don't know what the issue is. Really annoying. Sorry. You could either, I don't know. Are you sure? So you don't have like both soapUI or multiple tabs or something else? So you're having multiple streams. That could be something. Okay, we also had a few questions. Oh, this is a very good question. I think we'll come to... Let's start hitting off some of the questions we got from Twitter. Especially Tweet to Mirage had a few good questions. So, can we convert our tests, the load tests, I guess you mean, that we created using soapUI Pro to loadUI open source? The load tests, no. You can't convert a load test to reliably. Depends on which one it is.
You generally can't convert the load test no matter which versions you use, because the way load tests work is so different.
Yeah.
So although there is like some dialogues that try to do that, the result might be more confusing than you were hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably easier to just recreate the load test using the loadUI components that Henrik showed.
Exactly.
And using the same test case, of course, that you had. And I I think that you can use soapUI Pro test cases with loadUI open source, or is it?
Yeah.
So you can run load. Yeah. So if you have a soapUI Pro test case with data source and stuff, you can run that in the open source.
Definitely.
loadUI.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a video that I made on loadUI.org that shows how to get started with the soapUI integration.
Okay.
If you
Cool.
feeling lost.
Great.
We have a question from Sefens at Twitter. How to use soapUI for generating a heartbeat log.
I think we have a bunch of questions right from
Yep.
from him. Should we?
But let's do the sentence in between. How to use soapUI to generate a heartbeat log, response, pass, fail history over time. And that's basically, I think you actually sent in a question
yeah, I think so.
before the, and I think that if it's the same one, you actually also said that that you have the test runner.bat script that generates detailed test results in the website-friendly report every 2 hours that you run over that you run with the task schedule in Windows 7. Your problem is the results don't say when they were run and contain no historical run information. And you need to support basic SLA or at least know when the failure started occurring. I prefer not to do any custom result log parsing and aggregation, and I can't use, and here's, we don't know why, but you can't use alert site at this time. My best option is to generate reports that includes timestamps, info, as well as history of last numbers of runs. Of course, the easiest way would be alert site.
Yeah, and if there isn't, I mean, you could use the alert site insight solution where you can host alert site inside your network. So if it's merely an access, it's hard to know why it can't use alert site. So if this is because the service isn't accessible from the outside, then that could be a way to use it.
Yeah, but if it's not that, if something political or otherwise, how would you go about creating this? And we thought about this a bit, and I think we came up with a few different ideas. It doesn't answer all, but I would probably put something in the cloud. Because I mean, you can create a Windows 7 instance at Amazon, for example, run it from there. But then you have all the custom stuff, like when timestamping and stuff. So that would require additional scripting.
Yeah, or if you could use the CI continuous integration server like Jenkins or Hudson, and
run it through Jenkins. Install Jenkins or Hudson.
And you can use that to run their tests repeatedly. And since they have support for aggregating JUnit style reports, which you can get out from the soapUI runner, you will get over time a pretty crude graph of failures and successes and timestamps and things. And as you say, as Niklas said, you can run that in the cloud if you want to test from the outside, or you can run it inside your network. So I think that's an easy way forward. It'll give you at least more data than you get from the Windows task scheduler, and it'll give you some historical data.
Yeah.
And it's we have a lot of users using Jenkins, Hudson, and it works just fine.
Yeah. We got a quick answer back from Stefan, and we got 99% of it. Production and QA environments are restricted environments. Well, if there is actually, we have SmartBear has an alternative now called Insight.
Basically, it's an appliance where they have the alert site stuff pre-installed, so you have it all inside your network.
Otherwise, if that's not an alternative, then you would run it from Jenkins or something, which would create this stuff you needed.
Yeah, I think it definitely get you way halfway there.
Yep. And Tweet to my right has a problem with making his project composite and then not being able to open it using soapUI open source. That's because it's a pro feature.
Yes. So that's expected.
Yes. But you can save a composite project as non-composite.
Yeah, you just change the flag to non-composite and save it. And then you can
Yep. And for those who don't know, composite projects is a pro feature which is when you're interested in, and somebody asked the question, why don't you support some kind of version control system like Subversion or Git? And we don't. But what we do have is composite project, which is really quick to set up. And from there you can manually check on it in or check out.
Yeah. So yeah, basically,
Yeah.
if you turn that on, it'll save your project instead of one file. It'll break it down into smaller files, and
Yeah.
then add a test case, test suite. I don't really remember what level, but then you can manage those files individually. You still have to manually check in, check out, commit, etc. If you're doing Git.
But maybe you could work on like 2 test cases.
Yeah,
in
definitely. You
parallel.
can work on different test cases. Maybe you have one test suite, one person's working on another test suite, another person's working on. So it definitely makes it easier. But it's, as Niklas pointed out, it could be much better if it was directly integrated into the tool, and that's something we want to do, but we just haven't had time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ah.
I work in. I actually prefer. I use Git for version control, and I prefer the shell now to just write in shell. And it seems that a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, especially Git users. But maybe because many of them are coming from like Unix environments where they use it. But sure, I kind of agree with you that I also like to keep it simple. So like basic file and using version control from the command line is fine for me. But yeah, but we all use it in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see when we get there. You guys like REST, right? I mean,
So here's actually a very, but I think this is something that's interesting. We'll see. So Jenny had a question on the chat. I have a question. I have a soapUI license. I changed soapUI Pro license. That is, I changed my profile on the same laptop, so soapUI does not work anymore. How do I solve this problem? This is a license issue, and this is.
This is very common.
Yeah, exactly. Quite a common problem. So I think we should address it.
Yeah, the problem here is actually that soapUI ties to your profile, as you mentioned here.
Yeah.
So when changing profile, the license won't work because it was tied to the previous profile. So I guess the answer for this is to contact support, and we'll help you out to solve the issue.
Yeah.
If you still have the old profile,
yeah, exactly.
then you can log in on the old profile, right, and start soapUI and deactivate.
Deactivate, yeah, sure, exactly. I was more thinking if like your computer crashed and you have to reinstall. But absolutely, if you have access to the old profile, the best way is to go into that profile, deactivate the license, and then you can activate on the new profile.
So Jenny, there is this in the help menu. There is an option to deactivate your license if you have your old profile. So go in there, deactivate, and then you can activate it on the new profile, and it should work perfectly. If not, you cannot log into the old profile.
Okay.
But then on the website soapUI.org, there's the support menu has a contact support option. Go there and we'll help you. We'll fix it.
Yeah.
No problem. We can't do it live because we would need your user data. But it would be fun to do. Let's see if I've missed somebody's question you've typed in the chat or otherwise. Did we talk about here's a let's see here. When will be Groovy or Maven script used in SoapUI? Can you please give a specific situation? So you never use a Maven script inside SoapUI?
No, I don't think so. But
Yeah.
Groovy script is that could be used pretty much everywhere actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot of you usually use them for event handling. That's very common in SoapUI. For instance, if you want to do something prior to a request or a test step or a test case, you can define a Groovy script for doing some action, whatever it could be, like logging or doing something else.
So Groovy, just to get the basics, Groovy is a programming language, or a scripting language, if you want to call it that, which is very similar to Java, but a bit easier maybe if you're new to programming. And it's you can use Java code if you are more familiar with Java, or if you find snippets on the web, you can use Java instead. But yeah, so that's Groovy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what's cool about using Groovy inside soapUI is that you have access to pretty much the whole soapUI library.
Yep.
In a easy way. So you could do some pretty advanced programming tasks within soapUI if you're.
Yeah, we've had examples where users have like their test cases actually just been a setup script, and the script would read the whole test definition from some external source and dynamically generate all the test steps and run through that and then remove it afterwards. So it's totally dynamic.
Yeah.
You know? So you could. I'm sure there was a valid case for doing it that way in that situation, but just to illustrate the possibilities, you can do more or less anything.
And the point is, I mean, whatever test software you're using, you will sooner or later come across either the limits of the software, because however how much features you have, there will be a limit. So that's one, or it's just that it doesn't work quite the way you want it to work. And then it's our obligation as tool makers to make sure that you can fix it yourself. And that's why we provide Groovy. So either you can extend it by doing your own stuff, or you can have just do it the way you prefer it. You can actually make dialogues and stuff if you want to as well. And speaking of Groovy, something that's fantastically cool is that in loadUI, you know, all those beautiful boxes you saw, they're all written in Groovy.
Yeah.
And you can write your own stuff.
Yeah, and there are some examples on the website. There's this gallery, right?
It is.
You can download components. So it's pretty easy to create your own.
And also, somebody asked before the webinar, where should I go if I'm interested in Groovy? I know that, first of all, go to groovy.codehouse.org. And Codehouse is codehaus.org. Or just Google Groovy. That's a really well-maintained site. And don't be scared about how it looks initially, because it's very, very well made, and it's easy to get started. Yeah. And also the guy who is the lead developer for Groovy, Guillaume, he also has written 1 or 2 books that are really good books, and I would recommend those books as well.
I think that if you're interested in scripting or programming, and you feel like this is maybe something I'm a bit curious about, but I haven't that's not where I started my career, then I think Groovy scripting in soapUI is a very good start. If you know soapUI, you curious about what Groovy is, it's a good start.
Good point. And it's a very good point to start working on test automation.
Yep.
I really think so. And since Groovy is a very good scripting language. It's easy to use. It's very I wouldn't say simplified, because that sounds wrong, but it makes a lot of stuff easy. It's a really good place to start. And maybe I'm thinking loud here, because we plan to have one of these sessions in 6 weeks and another in 12 weeks. We could do a bit of scripting stuff. We could start off by doing 30-minute scripting.
Yeah, it's a common question.
Yep.
I mean, scripting is a very common topic in support. In the forums.
That would be cool, actually.
I think
we should have an online course where you can you can hand in assignments, and we start well, this is the first lecture, and then you hand in assignment, then you get certified soapUI scripter.
Oh, that would be fun.
I'm writing that Nicholas promises a Groovy webinar.
Yeah, do that.
Do that.
I promise that these guys will hold the Groovy webinar.
Yeah, me too. I promise that.
No, but it would be fun. I think we all kind of like it. I think. Funny how security vulnerabilities are handled in soapUI. I hope you don't mean our security vulnerabilities, but I guess you mean how do you do security testing. I think it feels kind of too easy, because I think that soapUI for APIs has probably the best security testing around.
Yeah, I think so too.
So there is something. I'll switch quickly to the screen. I won't do anything, but I'll just show you. So if you look here, you can actually see security tests. And soapUI actually allows you to create security tests for the 10 most common vulnerabilities. So we're using OWASP as a basis for the 10 most common vulnerabilities. And in Pro, it's actually a matter of it's just say generate security tests for this, and soapUI will automatically generate lots of requests for all those 10 vulnerabilities. And it's all pre-scripted, it's all ready-made. It's just a matter of a few buttons, and it will help you do SQL injection, XML bombs, a lot of good stuff.
Didn't we do demo on that when we released that?
Yep.
I think that webinar is still on YouTube, or
Yep.
you could probably see, or maybe even on our website there are some demos on how that works.
Yeah. And I actually
Check
think
that
we're
out.
fantastic.
Yeah,
That's
it's a really cool feature.
Yep. But use it wisely, please. Certify. Let's see if we have something else. Now let's go to the questions. This one is pretty easy, so we can get that. By the book we have 3 or so more minutes to go, but I think we'll go over time a bit. So let's see. David Martin from actually one of our, I'm not going to say because I don't know if I'm allowed to say what company or organization you come from, but actually remember your organization, because you were one of the most this is from the very early days of soapUI. You guys were using our tool quite extensively, and we like you guys a lot. We passed by your church a few years ago. I remember when we passed going down Highway 1. So, hi David. So, David is using soapUI to test REST services. These are basic services which only support a GET request. The service returns a JSON response that I perform an assert on. The JSON response shows up at the very end of the raw response data. When running the service, it returns an HTTP status code other than 200. So it returns a 400 or 401. And there is still a JSON response that he can see in soapUI, but it has no data. So there's no JSON response in the raw data. But when David runs this through Fiddler, he can actually see that there is content.
JSON content?
Yep. What am I doing wrong?
Well, it's a bit hard to know if what's going wrong where. It's a bit strange that you're getting actually a content response for a 400 error. So that's I think we're a bit puzzled that because for that I don't think you're supposed to get.
Are we talking standards here again?
Yeah, it's standards. That's what the answer is.
I'm not sure what the standard says about 400 errors, but usually for errors you don't get a response. It's just an error. But maybe there's some exception. But
I would say is if you have a 400 error, you shouldn't be getting any payload.
Exactly. That would be my spontaneous reaction as well. So of course there's always an exception to the rule, but it would be you probably have to dig a little bit more into that to really flesh it out. But maybe start there.
Yeah. And here's another kind of cheap one, but we'll do it anyways. Do we know of any? And this is an honest to God question. Carl Dichter asked if there are any free test management packages that works well with soapUI or that we would like to recommend. And there is. We like and use our own software. So we use a piece of software called ALM Complete, which isn't free, but you can also use our free the free versions of it. And you have Dev Planner and QA Planner. I posted the links in the chat room, but go to smartbear.com, products, free tools, Dev Planner, or SmartBear.com products, free tools, QA Planner. They're pretty great. Also in the chat now we got a question from Nick. I'll read it straight away here. I'm planning to learn SoapUI. Is it tough like Selenium, and does it involve extensive scripting in Java? I mean, the scripting paradigm, like we've been talking about Groovy all the time, but that's when you reach a certain level. We're trying to stay away from the scripting paradigm. That's one of the, I think, most important stuff is that most tools, you record, like Selenium or other commercials, you record and you get a script and then you edit the script. That's not how you work in soapUI.
No, I think, for most ad hoc testing and a lot of the functional testing that you do in soapUI, including advanced testing like data-driven testing and all that stuff, you don't have to do any scripting at all. It's pointing and clicking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Point and click testing. So it's definitely not as complex as Selenium to get up and running. I mean, if you're doing soap, you import the whistle and it'll thanks to the contract, it'll just get you on the way pretty quickly. So I think it should be definitely easier to get started with than Selenium. But just like you guys pointed out, if you want to do really advanced stuff further down the road, maybe at some point you will have to get to scripting.
But that's down the road.
That's down the road.
But it's still complex because it's API, so you don't have a GUI to look at. I mean, there's a lot of other complications, but that's not soapUI related, really. But the important thing I think Nick should know is that so we're not that script oriented. Instead, you have to get used to, like, we see it as being more test oriented. So you have test cases and you have test suites that consist of test cases, and that's actually the more important. And inside those test cases, you create the steps in the test, just like when you actually write the test case in writing in your test management tool. So I go to soapui.org, watch the get started stuff, and try it out. There's always learning curve test tools, but I think ours is pretty good. Let's see if we have any more questions on email support for soapUI Pro users. This is also a good one. So one change we've done recently is we do have email support, but in order to open a ticket, we have because we were starting to notice that, and we'll be honest, the support questions we got in were kind of getting of worse quality, so we had to debug the reports we got, and in order to make support quicker, get to a solution quicker, we actually are forcing all users currently to use a form on soapui.org that kind of forces people to provide the info we need to get a quick solution.
But as you're saying, I mean, this is very beneficial for the user as well, because then you will know what data to provide us to help you as quickly.
And not everything is mandatory to fill in, but it can still help to see, like, oh, I forgot this, because there's a field for it. Even if it's not mandatory.
Yeah, and also what we have, for now, I don't think we have much of this, but what we really like is to make the form more intelligent and maybe even predict what you're trying to solve here. So we will have links to, like, FAQs and stuff like that, hopefully to give you a nudge in the the right direction. So to say.
Tweet to my right have also two more questions. And one that I forgot that I really wanted to bring up, and that's data-driven tests for NoSQL. Like, for example, Mark Logic. First, let's do the other one. Let's keep that in mind. Security tests for REST APIs.
It's the same. It's the same. You can do security testing of REST, SOAP, AMF, JMS, whatever is HTTP, JDBC, for whatever reason you might want to do that. If you want to security test your stored procedures, so sure, any request format supported by soapUI is also supported by the security testing framework.
So let's go back to the Mark Logic stuff. we also had a question about mark logic beforehand. But data-driven for mark logic.
Well, I mean, the data-driven testing, when it comes to databases, is tied to JDBC, but there is a groovy data source option. So basically, you have to write a script that pulls the data from your NoSQL database and provides it to the data-driven engine in soapUI. And as far as we figured out from a press release the other day, MarkLogic 6 is going to have a good Java API, so you should be able to plug that into soapUI and call that from Groovy and pull the data that way.
Yeah.
So that's specific for MarkLogic. So, but there isn't like any native support yet for any NoSQL databases.
Yeah. But it's an interesting question. We've also been talking about so on loadUI in loadUI Pro, the feature you get is what we call server monitoring, which is basically you monitor stuff on the server and see how if is your database going slow. Do we have slow queries on the Oracle database or whatever when we're doing load tests? And we've been talking about NoSQL database supporting that in loadUI. So, well, sooner or later we have to look into that. Honestly, we don't have any plans for it now, but sure.
We know that they're increasing in popularity. So.
Yeah, and just to get back to the Groovy scripts, just as it's easy to create your own components in loadUI, it's also really easy to create your own monitors, right?
Yep.
So in loadUI Pro, so if you really want to monitor like a NoSQL database that has a Java API, it's pretty straightforward, I guess.
Yeah, I would say it's even easier than creating a custom component.
Okay,
cool. And Fanny, this is also a question that we didn't plan to answer because we didn't have any answer for it, but since you asked. So, how can I get a certification for soapUI? And the honest to God answer is there is no certification. The closest thing you can do to have a certification or get a certification is to be trained by this company called Wise Clouds, our training partner, and I can promise here now that if you go through a training with Wise Clouds, I can certify that you're good enough as a soapUI tester.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that's available now. But he's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good material, very thorough, and goes through all the features and everything.
They've worked with us for ages.
Yeah, they've worked with us for.
Yeah, and actually he's great input to the stuff we do in terms of development as well. So. That's what I would say. We do entertain ideas about certification, but that's just still we're entertaining ideas stage. But we'd recommend the testing. It's both on-site and on the net, so whatever you prefer. Let's see. Should we do one or two more? I went through... here's... two interesting questions from Kido Ma. How can I do this one? I gotta skip because I don't quite understand. How can I invoke another Groovy script in the Groovy that both the Groovy scripts uses in one test case? That we will try to. So basically, let's boil it down to how do I call one Groovy script from another Groovy script?
Yeah.
There is this feature in soapUI that we call script libraries. Groovy script libraries basically is that you can place your own Groovy script in one of the folders in the soapUI installation folder, and then it will be imported into soapUI when you run it, and you can call the script from there. So that's basically the way you do it. So there's absolutely a possibility to define your own scripts and have them imported into soapUI and take advantage of that. And actually, soapUI comes with a set of utility scripts, right?
No, I think it's just some demo.
Yeah, okay, maybe some.
But there is actually today we saw a site with some utility scripts.
Yeah, that's right. One of the former soapUI developers.
Yep.
He's put up a small utility class, which
Yep.
has methods that makes it easier in your scripts to access different objects in the SoapUI API. So check it out. I think we can probably
Yep.
post the link. I
Yeah.
don't remember the name.
S tools.
S tools, yeah.
Yeah, S tools.
S tools.
SoapUI tools.
Yeah, with the Z.
In the
S
end.
tools.
Mm.
And also want to say we love you, Robbie.
We miss you.
Should we do something else? Here's this is more features. It's boring. So let's do this instead. Somebody's asking. Colin Chapman is saying that I've been using soapUI tool, and you're very impressed. Thank you. I came across an issue where you found a known defect in the tool that you knew was fixed in soapUI Pro, and you wondered kind of when it would be fixed in soapUI open source. And there's a quick answer.
That's impossible. No, it's not. But it's a bit surprising because SoapUI Pro, and specifically this defect was in the core version. So
Yep.
and it's the same code base used. So and Pro uses the core version as a library. So if it works in the Pro version, it's a bit surprising it has to work. Otherwise, unless there's some error in our infrastructure where we distribute files or
Yep.
something. But it really should work in the free version if it
So
works.
does this mean that SoapUI open source got less bugs than SoapUI Pro?
Well, the other way around, actually. Probably it does, though.
Okay, so we've gone 15 minutes over. I think that maybe we should break there unless anybody else has any good questions. Yeah, one of your SoapUI Pro trials got expired yesterday, and it's running courtesy mode. That's how we've set it up. So you have a SoapUI Pro trial for 2 weeks, and then afterwards you can't run it in trial mode anymore. You can always contact our sales organization for an extension. Somebody asked about that before the webinar as well. Here's another one from Tweet to my right. Thank you so much for all your questions. It's fantastic. Do I need to install soapUI Pro to run my test in different systems? It depends.
Well, I mean, if you want to use the command line tools on other systems, then you need to install soapUI Pro on those systems.
Yeah.
But I think what you were getting at is that to run the command line tools, you actually don't need a license. So
No.
you can, if you want to set it up on a build server to do continuous continuous testing or things like that.
Yeah.
So the license is for the GUI,
Yeah.
basically for
For the
creating
user,
your
yeah.
tests and authoring tests, but the test execution does not require a Pro license.
Yeah, and Kendall also wrote in regards to the security testing, XML bombs, isn't that something we drink in the Swedish office? And it's actually true. It's a
rumor.
It's
Can't verify that.
no. Maybe we should break there and get you guys to figure out what that XML bomb stuff is. I'd like to thank you all for hanging through technical difficulties, echoes and stuff. Thank you so much for staying with us. For the next session, we will fix the audio.
And we have promised a groovy scripting session.
Yeah, next session, groovy scripting session.
I
And
heard certification. I don't know.
Huh?
I heard a groovy scripting certification.
Now you're promising too much. All right, awesome.
No, you don't need license to use command line. That's true. And thank you so much again for all your questions. Twitter Mirage. Follow soapUI on Twitter @soapUI. And follow SmartBear on Twitter @SmartBear. And does anybody else want to be followed?
No, I don't want that
Yeah.
one. It's scary stuff.
Yeah, I follow Ole home sometimes,
Yeah.
and he doesn't like it. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. See you again in 6 weeks.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.